Welcome to WROL Broadcast. I am Hate Mail. With me today, we have the world famous Ogre Barbarian.
Hello.
We have M4.
Hey guys.
And we also have special guest Red Tornado.
Hello.
Red, why don't you just give us a quick background before we go into our topic that we're going to discuss today. How long have you been playing and what got you into this game? And obviously, I have a good idea who your favorite character is, but kind of just go through that real quick.
I first came across the game about like 2 years ago, but then kind of put it away for quite a long time. And recently, maybe in the last like 8 months, I've been exploring it again.
And your favorite character, I'm guessing, is Red Tornado?
Yeah, Red Tornado, but he's not in game, obviously.
Hopefully, eventually. Who's your favorite character in game right now?
I think I have a pretty good team with Domitroy that works pretty well. An Owlman, so that combination's pretty nice, I'd say.
Alright, well, we appreciate you being on. The main topic we wanted to get into today is we've kind of kept quiet about this for the last several months, but it's been going on for so long that we wanted to address it. And it does seem like hackers have taken over Siege, both at the highest levels and, even in the just top 30, top 50. So the first topic, we were going to kind of go through a different list of questions and just kind of address this topic in as neutral of a fashion as we can. But the first topic we wanted to just kind of establish.
Do we have undeniable proof that there are hackers in Siege?
Which I think we can easily answer that as a definitive yes. As we've all seen, there's a player that's been around, seems like, I don't know, a couple months, called Marcoda, how do you pronounce that, M4? Marcoda Cruz?
Marco de Cruz, I think.
Yeah, there you go. I'm well known for my pronunciation abilities. He has beaten, I have video, which you'll see if you're watching the YouTube version of this, beating many of our teams with his 10,000 power team. And then there's also Knight Ingress. I think you have something of that, don't you, Red?
One
of us. I know one of us do. I can't remember which
one. My alliance has a lot of matches against Marco de Cruz.
Yeah.
Of him just beating us with 10k teams and such.
So that first question, if we're wondering, are they in Siege, and have they been in Siege for quite a while? We can answer undeniably, does exist. M4, as the resident historian of the Owls, our next question is,
what is the history of winning in Siege?
And we have a list of all the prior winners, don't we, M4?
Yes, we do have it. So, okay. First,
and this dates all the way back to Larfleeze, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
The very first one. So let's kind of just...
my favorite Siege. So, here's the history of winners. Larfleeze won by myself. Then, Manta was Sheriff Lobo. Batwoman was Jon Snow, bless his soul. Russell Ghoul, Sheriff Lobo again. Mary Marvel, it's Grim. And Alan Scott was won by the boy by sheer money. But,
because he bought, just to go back a little bit, he bought Alan Scott in the shop, like when they first came available, and Alan Scott is obviously very potent, as everyone knows. So that did give him quite the advantage.
And at that point, it sounded crazy buying someone to L1. But now it's like peanuts. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Right. So Barda is once again Sheriff Lobo. Stargirl is Grim. Booster Gold. Won by myself. Talia and Sheriff Lobo again. Eclipso, by some sheer luck, some person named, who's this? He, Male, something like that, won Eclipso. And then Kona, once again, Sheriff Lobo. I'm seeing a trend here. And then Ultraman, won by my buddy Loot. And then, alright, then Parallax was won by Twin City. Cassandra Kane, Twin City.
Hawkman!
I forgot the alias that he runs by at that point in
It
time.
was Dark Side.
Yes,
That
Darkseid,
ATU.
but I was, yeah, so, alright.
Yeah, we don't know for
then-
sure on that one. It's either him or Twin City because they both were gaining tremendous points in the last couple minutes.
I think someone in my alliance, well, my old alliance, actually said it was Twin City, but I'm
Oh,
not sure
really?
how he confirmed that actually.
It was within
It's
seconds.
hard to say.
Because
We were checking at the last minute there. It was Darkseid was leading by 4 points, I believe.
I brought up the screenshots of them essentially, and it seemed like they were just dismissed. So maybe they got confirmation from Twin City, since that was essentially the same alliance as him.
All right. So those are the winners. All right. So let's throw some math out there. So what does it take to win Siege? So the perfect. All right. So maybe people will learn a thing or two with this. All right. So in a day, you gain at most 43 energy. So 15 is from just your timer. You get a point every 96 minutes. So in a day, you get 15, right? And then you can buy 15 energy every day. And then from your missions, you get 8 from doing 30 heroics. And you get 3 from PvP if you do 27 fights, and then 2 more if you do the shards. I think it's 53 shards. All right, so that gives you 43 for the day. All right, and then what's the max number of points that you can get? So if you want to be efficient in your battles, the most bang for your buck is going to be doing a full point revenge. So a full point revenge is 10 points for 2 energy, so you get 5 points per energy. So the max in a day you can get is 43 times 5 is equal to 215. Obviously, you can't do that in day 1 because you can't revenge yet. So, but you get the idea. So 215 is the max you can get.
Okay. So basically, and we kind of learned this as we went on Siege, if you're able to use a full bonus team in Revenge, you are able to get the maximum amount of points. And we used to do that pretty frequently, but then as the meta shifted to a Lex meta,
Would full bonus teams be able to win consistently against speed teams?
and as somebody who places always high M4, wanted to see if you could answer that question.
It depends from siege to siege. So if your bonus tunes allow you to at least go before the richer teams out there, because like this siege, let's take this siege for example. It's a very common tactic for people to use Lex and Castaway or even Wally. So if someone uses those 2 tunes, which is very prevalent, it's almost impossible. I can't even do an 8-point revenge on those because you're going to be a slave to RNG.
What
So
about
even
the
more
previous Siege?
Let's see. I have to list the bonus tunes. Give me one check. Oh, the Hawker one. Sometimes, because the reason you can is because of Accolade. Accolade is faster than Castaway. So maybe you can do an 8-point team, but still a 10-point team consistently would be near impossible, or at least I could not.
Okay. So let me ask you the next question. As previous sieges, we see how difficult it was. For 13, how many months was it? 13 months? Nobody had ever won back-to-back sieges prior?
Yes, no one has
Up until
the last 3. Yeah.
last 3 or 4. depending on
Yep.
who won the last one.
If you're only using 1 or 2 bonus tunes, what methods would allow you to achieve World's Finest?
So the one advantage you could get from using one bonus tune is one. Well, there's a few. One, you're most likely not gonna lose a tune because you're gonna be using meta tunes, right? So you don't have to deal with the weaknesses of the siege bonus tunes. And second, you will probably not going to be revenged a lot because you're not worth it. So having to attack a revenge team that you can't use at least 3 bonus tunes is not worth it. So if you use a Richard team like you do,
And for
you're
people
not
that
going
don't
to
know,
get
Richard team it's the common name for Richard, like Dick Grayson. So we refer to them as Richard teams.
Yes. All right. So like Hate Mail, who just ignores bonus tunes and just use his Richard teams, which is like 40k, which is near impossible to use bonus tunes. He will not lose the 2 points when someone revenges you. So that gives you some advantage. However, let's see the maximum points you can get. 14 times okay, 600. It's not terrible, but the thing is, you're going to lose the potential of 4 to 6 points extra point. However, the risk for losing is lower, so there's a risk reward.
Let me ask you another question. If you're using a team with only 1 bonus tune, but that team is a slow team, so you do not typically get the first turn, what are your odds of not losing a tune?
If you use a tank with sustain, you should be able to outlast Lex teams or even the faster teams. You've seen this in the tank meta, right? So there's a few options. You start with Hal Jordan with 35% shield. You can do a, let's say, heavy buffing team with Donna Troy, so they cannot overwhelm you, and then you just outlast them. Or let's say you have a heavy overheal, so you always have twice health, and maybe even like a heavy taunter like Barda. That would allow you to like have heavy sustain.
Now, I see, and for those of you that aren't aware, looking at the last siege, we had, what was his name? Red Tornado? I can't think. Darkside?
Yeah, Denny Bass was going by Darkside then, I'm pretty
So,
sure.
supposedly in the rumor mill, and this is where we didn't want to bring this up previously because it's an uncomfortable topic, but once again, multiple sieges have happened now. And Danny Bass was removed from Owls for hacking, supposedly according to Adam, who was formerly with UGLA, who's become Black Lantern Corps. Somebody had bought Danny Bass's account. Danny Bass had quit. But during that siege, if anybody noticed, and I believe I have a screenshot, I'm going to try to find it before this episode's published, but I'm not sure. Darkseid changed his name to Danny Bass before the end, and then him and Twin City gained ungodly amounts of points in a very short amount of time. And he's now changed his name to Atlas. So we'll see what happens at the end of this siege with those two.
But in the raid that came like 3 days after, it was his name was Danny Bass throughout, and I think and he's in the same alliance. So yeah, essentially, I'm not quite sure about the validity of what Danny Bass told Adam.
Right.
That sold his account.
So Red Tornado, you came from originally. You were in the Black Lantern Corps, aka UGLA.
Yeah.
So one thing that we're very curious about is that for this siege, up until there started to be some questions appearing from former and current teammates of Twin City Legends, he used the exact same team for how long did he use the exact same team? And the same team you'll see video of, I could win a decent amount of matches because it's an extremely strong team, but I was unable to not lose a tune, I would say 30 to 50% of the time. So the team is White Lantern Sinestro lead, Barda, Black Mask, and Chemo, which is a very good team. It can hold up against some Lex teams. I took it into Siege and tested it, and you can see the video of my results. I know Twins is a little bit stronger, but I don't see how you could win 100% of the time with that team without losing a tune. And if you lose one tune when you're using minimal bonus points, I'm struggling to see how you stay in the lead. So Red Tornado, why don't you share some of your data that you've compiled?
Essentially, what Twin City was doing, well, for the first half of Siege, up until about like maybe a little more than the first half by 1 or 2 days or so, he was using that 14-point team exclusively.
And then there will be a link in the show notes, Red Tornado's file. It has all the screenshots on every time point changed. Almost, kind of explain what data you have collected, Red Tornado.
Essentially I was kind of just with prior knowledge of some sieges, knowing what I would probably knowing the extent that I'd probably try to collect data on to see what the situation was here. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to dedicate that much time to it, but at least about day 5, day 6 in, it was pretty clear to me that something sketchy was going on from just envelope calculations or something. So it was pretty clear to me that Danny Bass and Twin City were kind of playing a little bit strange, not only qualitatively, but just from some math I did. So day 6, I decided to do my best to essentially capture every match. And all the defense losses, all the revenge wins, and all the match losses. So that's essentially what the goal was starting day 6. I think I did that quite well, actually. Essentially, for the first half of Siege, it was just that 14-point team used, the one you mentioned, Hate Mail, and...
What did Danny use?
Danny's just been using one team all of Siege, and he hasn't even been caring about revenges at all. Essentially, that's the summary on Danny. He's been using Hal, Talia, Chemo, and Mirror Master.
I think it was Mirror Master Mary. When I've seen him on defense logs of teammates, there's never been any deviation of team.
Yeah, it really has been one team for at least 95% of matches, and he hasn't been using any revenges actually. Just that 18-point team, which I think you said it right.
Which is not a bad team, but I've never been able to use one team through an entire siege. M4, is that in the realm of possibility, using one exact same team for weeks on end?
The thing there is it in the realm of possibility? Maybe, because it all depends on luck on who you get on your board. So early on in Siege, so the first, I don't know how many days. So if you manage to search on top, there's a big chance, because it happened to me too, because at that early on, you don't know yet who's going to be on the top spot, right? It fluctuates. You get quite a few bots on the first few days, because before you get to the 300 trophy point. So few people will get their heads. So if you get there and there's not enough people in the pool, you'll get some bots. So is it possible? Maybe. But even the bot teams are sometimes tricky. So sometimes you get a reverse flash, or maybe even an Arcus, or even Grundy sometimes is annoying. So do I use the same team? No. Is it possible? Maybe. I can't say for sure that it's impossible. But I, for one, cannot do it with one team.
Well, and that my thing, too, was that when you look historically, not just this siege, these two players never had to account for speed teams. And we only saw a change in speed teams when there's been people publicly calling it out because nobody sees how it's possible.
There are speed teams. It's definitely a thing. Maybe if it weren't a thing, we'd be able to see what we're seeing now. But just by the teams, right? But essentially, if you take first turn with Lex teams, and if you don't have a turn 1 taunter, or maybe a sustain building team like Donna Troy on there with some awareness is. At least from my perspective, it's pretty impossible to just use one team all of Siege.
Now, how long I know we established Danny Bass has been using, aka Atlas, been using the same team through this entire siege. What about Twin City Legend? When did he shift to stop using the same characters?
Here, let me check that really quickly here. So, it looks like day 15 that the switch happened for good. So, like 2/3 of it, right? Yeah, like up to day 14 is kind of like half and half. Day 12 and 13, pretty clear that it's still the 14-point team. After it was the 14-point team, there were some Lex teams.
And that was, I think we might.
But yeah. So
do you
day
have a
14,
date on that?
well, day 14, Siege ends like today, right? So on April 19th, I would say that was a shift.
And M4, on that same topic, can you talk about how well Twin Cities' performance was in other sieges in comparison?
I don't have the numbers, but from what I recall, the first siege that he won, he was like head and shoulders above everyone. Like, he was.
And I remember that was when we got a little bit suspicious, but we couldn't. Obviously we didn't say anything because we thought maybe we just all did terrible.
Yeah,
siege.
I mean, I was second, and he may have like a full day of siege ahead of me. So, well, I don't remember how many times I lost, but not a lot. But I just couldn't catch him.
And that was the month that Lex was a bonus tune. So
Yes,
it made
yes.
things seem a little unusual. And in previous sieges, did anyone in the 13 months prior ever win by a huge margin?
Trying to remember.
I think the only time that was Du Bois, he had a large lead. I don't know if it was quite that large.
No, the biggest lead ever was when Sheriff Lobo won when they sold the extra energy on day one.
Oh, well,
remember that?
We can even count that one
right, because he like bought it and then surged ahead, and then everyone like, yeah, I'm not going to catch that, so everyone just gave up. And then the boy I think has one of the better margins, but without having recorded every siege, but I would still bet that December siege Lex was the biggest lead because I was not even in striking distance, not even close.
And what about the siege after that?
That's the siege after that. Let me try to remember.
Wasn't that the one that?
Cassandra Kane. Yeah, I was also second. It wasn't as big of
But I think there was held energy because he was 5 matches ahead of you the day before.
Yes. Maybe, yeah. Because I know Sheriff Lobo also does it. So I used to do that. Like, I hide my energy. So remember Booster? Some people thought that they could catch me, and then they was like, what the heck happened at the last minute? And I was laughing all the way. But then some people had like issues with energy, like they couldn't claim the rewards, the missions. So I stopped doing that. There's really no value other than pissing off the one trying to catch you. So I just use them all. But the thing is, you can stash about 14 energy when it flips. That's as much as you can stash without losing anything. So 14, 15 gives you about 60 points. 60.
Well, and you can also save your alliance energy when you purchase too, and then the revenge.
You can stash those, and so at the last day you can get surprised by as much as 60 to 80 points depending on what you decide to do.
Now, last siege, in the last couple minutes, I noticed, especially Danny Bass, Atlas, Darkside, whatever you want to call him, he went from like 8th place to neck and neck with in first. because we thought Grandpa Owl was in the running, and then he got left in the dirt on the last day.
Right. He was trying to go for first because we thought it was mathematically possible. We thought because I was calculating with Loot and everyone and saying like, all right, let's try to give him an edge. If we can revenge his competitors, and then see where then it's all up to him if he can win all of his fights. And then all of a sudden in the last, I don't know, 30 minutes, maybe less.
Yeah, I think it was
And
like
he was like
20 or
left
15.
he was left in the dust. He was like, what the heck just happened? And he was like, all right, there's no way. And he ended up third.
And that brings me on to my next topic, because they were suddenly gaining blocks of 10 and 20 points at a time, full bonus tunes every match. And you noticed, Red Tornado, the speed at some of the matches.
What is the fastest you can gain points in Siege?
Essentially, regardless of lead, really, they're able to put up like 30, 45 seconds a match. Essentially, they can put up 30 to 45 seconds a match. There are some screenshots that I could share on that if I have the time, but there also is a lot more. Essentially, you can judge it by the in-game clock and the pictures, right, to see how fast the matches are. But 30 to 45 seconds with non-Lex lead or with Lex lead, it turned out pretty much the same, and that was about the
Lex
fastest.
lead I could see, but the Revive, Barda, White Lantern, Sinestro led teams, you're not doing those in 30 seconds.
Also, not with Hal, right?
Yeah, same
Hal's
thing with
more
the
of a
House lead either.
sustain. But one important thing to note on the Revive teams, right, is that essentially if Lobo were a bonus character, well, just like if Lobo were a bonus character, no one would. I'm not sure if he's been a bonus character, so you guys can inform me on this.
He
but
has before, but
He
yeah,
was.
yeah, you don't use them because you don't get the
yeah,
stars.
from my perspective, you definitely probably want to use Lobo. Not only he's a taunter, obviously, but as soon as he goes down, not that he has too much health, you lose a star. But then, okay, there's no like revive taunter on White Lantern teams, right? But they're all gonna revive, and that team really does rely a lot on sustain-wise and damage-wise on the revive element.
Now, based on your calculations, was there any tune lossage for either of their teams or losses in general?
Twin City, not that I can, no, not up to now. And we're recording this with like 4 hours left in Siege, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not up to now. Denny Bass, he had like 3 losses, 2 botches in a day out of like 7 matches. So 2 wins on that, 2 clean wins on that day. But everything else apart from that is absolutely fine. I am not sure. Decently apart. They were spread out as you would, maybe like, it was spaced out throughout the day, essentially.
That's unusual if he is indeed hacking. Which,
Yeah, it really is strange, right? But just lose a match when you're hacking, but it's also really strange just to lose them all in the same day. Like out of the 3 he lost this Siege up to now, they were all in the same day, and out of the 2 botches, those were in the same day also.
maybe his hacks broke for the day.
Maybe.
And I'm more
Maybe.
confident in his hacking because he was booted from us because of hacking, so.
Just one last note on that. I'm not exactly sure how they maybe control their points, right? Assuming that like a hacker would control their points, maybe to make it seem like they're not hacking to avoid suspicion. So unless he plans to do something like he did last Siege in the last few hours here, which I'm not sure of, but unless something like that happens.
But Ogre, as a non-biased participant, and we intentionally didn't bring in a bunch of owls. M4 has been a consistent Siege winner, which is why he was on here. But always in the top couple. But Ogre was unaware that we were even planning on doing this at all until today. I've intentionally tried to keep this as neutral
2 minutes
as
before,
possible.
even.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, Ogre, based on everything you're seeing and hearing and provided, kind of give me your thoughts.
All right. Well, I don't know. It's really hard to say. Like, based on Red Tornado's data and everything, this is what we're going to have to use as our indicator. Like, because by the numbers, it is all possible.
Well, the numbers, and I was going to say, the numbers aren't really the crux of the issue. It's the fact that no team, you're not accounting for speed teams, you're not accounting for any
Right.
counter.
And that's what I'm saying. You're gonna have to go by that data, because by the numbers don't indicate that that's a problem.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
I feel like some
You have
numbers...
to go by the data that Red Tornado grabbed.
All right. But if we can just touch on like an issue that we kind of mentioned, which is like, how to avoid suspicion as a hacker, like kind of point control. So essentially, Twin City, well, Danny Bass, we know, essentially used the same team throughout all of Siege, with few exceptions.
Right.
Twin City used, like, up to day 14, as we said, 2/3 of Siege, and then maybe, like, 18-point teams. But when he switched to the 18-point teams, there may have been, like, half as many revenges, which you can take as you want, but essentially, going back to what Ogre said about the calculations, if we can go a little more detail into it. So essentially, one main thing that I found really early on was that if the 15 initial energy wasn't given, if we all started with 0 and then we passive regen from there, there would essentially be no difference for Danny Bass and Twin City, because their averages stayed the same, the trend stayed the same, there was no initial point jump. Their trend is essentially straight linear with no exception early on, it really is as linear as it gets, which is expected, right? But other players actually, really nobody else experienced a linear trend, except Twin City up to now, and Danny Bass. But it really kind of depends what Danny Bass does. So on the first observation of like the initial 15 energy not affecting their scores at all, really, that's essentially the support that I have for that everything was linear, and without that being calculated in, with just the 43 allotted daily in the first 2-3 days, which is where it would show most, everything checked out with the rest of Siege in terms of averages and trends. But one other important thing about this is I was able to track like something important that I found, which is like energy going to the next day, right? Energy surplus, energy not used. And this is one of the, at least for me, it's one of the big indicators. And it's one of the strangest things. So essentially, going in day 20, since we're in day 21 right now, the last day of Siege, but going into this day, there's essentially a 34.5 energy surplus for Twin City. So of that 9-10 that Ogre mentioned, I think, minus 43 that he would use for the last day, 34 of that amount has not been, there was no need for it, hasn't been used in matches. And this data is actually
like a 200-point lead.
Yeah, it really is about that much. Well, it's like 200 that's not been liquidated, essentially. That's not showing in the score. And that's why Danny Bass and Twin City were like last, and then they were just able to put up crazy points. They came from like 9th and 13th, maybe like 200 and 400 points down to first and second, and by a very large lead. And this isn't really like what M4 mentioned with like a 50-point lead, just hiding like 15 energy, or buying the pack on the previous day, like right at the end, and just making sure you passive regen all the way through the last day with like minimal gap. That's not really what it is. It's just a really large surplus, a lot of energy that wasn't used. And that 34.6 actually is just what there's really concrete proof for. It's not counting energy. It's not counting day 1 through 5, and it's not counting any initial energy, like the initial 15 energy that seems to not have been used. And then for Danny Bass, it comes out at like 50 so far, going from day 6 to day 20, which is pretty crazy. But
Well, and the time we're recording this, I'm going to live record, just refreshing my screen over and over, which you'll, at the second half of this podcast, you'll hear me and Luke chatting as we watch their scores. So we will see if they use this energy.
essentially, it's 74.55 right now for Danny Bass at day 20. Starting day 5, though. And these numbers might seem like, they might seem, obviously they're very high, right? Nobody has this much spare energy. And obviously if you do have this much spare energy, it's going to be blocked by passive regen. It's going to block the passive regen, which is 15 a day, and it's quite significant. So it brings up a few questions in that regard as to how they have enough energy per day, even functioning with passive regen, despite the surplus. But
That was
one
always
other
a theory of
point.
mine, that they were able to obtain extra energy somehow.
Yeah, that's what you mentioned early on, right? Like, maybe like going into this siege.
Well, there used to be always posts where Twin City would brag about being able to get double payouts on everything he bought. So I wonder
Yeah, I
if that was
do.
possible with the siege energy.
Yeah, an officer in my alliance brought that exact same thing up, where you could get double the amount on certain things in the shop before it was fixed, essentially. But on the topic of not needing passive energy regen, it really is exactly 15 a day, right? So, and for most of this siege, it seems like passive energy regen really wasn't needed by either of them. So it's like a pretty good logical explanation as to why they don't need that 15 a day if they're just doubling the 15 that they can get from the shop. Like from...
Yeah, or some other thing. And I've noticed too that when videos have been posted by them, we've never seen anything but the match. They always skip past those screens.
Oh yeah, that's just weird, honestly. But it can raise whatever suspicions that wants, but it's not really going to be good to like they can just probably post the match screen going into that. Yeah, it was always cut out, but essentially it seems like this was the situation last siege, right, when they both put up like crazy amount of points at the end of the day. But one other explanation apart from obviously the damage hack that there could be, and getting more energy from the shop, is just maybe having the timer just operating regardless of the energy surplus, which Joker may have been he may have been able to answer on some of the possible hacks they've been using. Not really sure. What are you guys' opinions on that?
M4, we haven't heard from you in a little while.
Well, the thing is the numbers, however high they are, like Over said, they're not impossible numbers. So I mean, best I can do is speculate, and I'd rather not do that. But whatever is happening is still within the realms of, it's mathematically achievable. That's what I can say.
Highly unlikely, but mathematically achievable. And that's,
Yes.
I would say that's pretty good. And there's no way for definitive proof. As you can see, there's people winning with 10K teams over and over that never seem to get the boot. But we wanted to kind of lay this out for the audience because it's been going on for quite a while. Doesn't seem possible. All right, guys. Well, I think that's enough. We'll wrap this up. Ogre, any final thoughts before we close up shop?
Final thoughts? Well, I think that the real takeaway here is that it is going to be actually impossible for anybody on the outside to prove.
Yep. That's always been my biggest fear, is that somebody with a
it's
geared
gonna be
roster
impossible.
would hack.
Yeah. Like, it is impossible because we don't have the normal indicators of, hacking. So I mean, I don't know. Like it's hard to explain, but again, like before was saying, it's not mathematically impossible. Like it's peculiar.
Yeah,
to say
the odds of just winning any siege 4 times in a
No,
row.
and that's the thing I think that's the most telling right now is that it's been 3 back-to-back sieges.
Well, this would be 4th. Yeah.
Now, soon to be 4, potentially. So, but yeah, like I think that's the most telling part. So, is that the back-to-backness? So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay, well, Siege just ended, and, well, yesterday evening. And as we can see, we had a 4th time, most likely 4th time. We don't know for sure on the last one because Danny Bass and Twin City were neck and neck. But Twin City won by 6 matches or so, 120 points, roughly. So, to recap, does seem a little highly suspicious. Can't say that we know for certain that any illicit behavior happened, but I would say the facts presented earlier do not paint a rosy picture, but we will leave that to the audience and everyone else to decide. But the biggest takeaway I have is that we really should push Warner Brothers to enhance their hacking detection. And on that topic, we have Joker. What are your thoughts after listening to this episode and just what you've observed over the last couple months?
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me on. Well, after hearing the episode and looking at the data that Tornado has posted up on Reddit, yeah, I find it all very concerning. And yeah, there's a very strong case against Twin City as far as how legitimate his wins are. Yeah, I'm pretty convinced. I'm trying to stay impartial about it, but I'm pretty convinced that he is a cheat. And I intend on bringing the information to administration and pushing to get some sort of resolution on this and a definitive answer on whether he is cheating or not. Yeah, hacking has been going on pretty long in Wraith and Siege, and it's a real discredit, especially in Siege, to those guys that have invested quite a lot of money into their teams to be ousted by somebody who's cheating. And it's a real kick to the face for those guys, because they're investing money into the game and helping getting this content created by investing into DC, and it's just not right.
Not to mention the entry fee to the Siege is like $200. So if you, assuming someone is hacking at the top, you're completely avoiding that chance to win.
Right. And everyone's spending 2,000 gems daily on extra energy daily for every day of Siege, and of course building up those 2 new tunes, their extra bonus points to work with and see if it helps them better out in the comp and gaining bonus points. So it's a massive investment. And the other direction that I think has to be looked at is, instead of just hacks as well as glitches, because seeing a lot of them pop up for various aspects of the game right now. And, I think they need to start looking to see if there is some sort of glitch of gaining additional energy or, gaining bonus points without using the proper tunes. So there's a few aspects I think they need to look at.
Well, I appreciate that. And then also one thing I did want to mention, I saw on Red Tornado's Reddit post that a lot of people were demonizing Black Lantern Corps. And really, I mean, I don't think there's any founded reason to disparage them. I mean, you're going to defend your guy until you know for certain. And this is an extremely difficult thing to prove, especially with somebody with an advanced roster. So there's still an element of doubt. And, I know a lot of them are great people. So, I think if they had any definitive reason to believe for certain, maybe after listening to this and looking at some of the data, they might think differently. But, I know they've taken action against hackers in the past. So, I don't think.
Yeah, I was going to say to their credit, in the past, they had Feroxer on there that was a cheat. And when he had been found out and had his trophies reset by the administration, Adam, who was in the the team at the time. He immediately ousted the guy, kicked him on out, and extremely apologetic about it. So
Yeah, and I've had multiple Black Lantern Corps members have reached out to me. Some of them in the past with concern, and then some of them, keeping an open mind. So, I don't.
Well, when you get 30 to 40 different alliances, the chances of having cheaters in one of them, it just increases quite a bit.
Yeah. I mean, we've had them in owls in the past. 300 people, you're going to have the odds of getting a bad seed or two. It's very high. So
yeah.
On that note, we will sign off.
Hi, this is Renee Sylvia 88, DC Legends moderator. Do you want to know about new characters while their sales are still happening? Get this perk and many others by becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/WROL Broadcast. We tried to find out how DPO 427 was doing in quarantine, but he still isn't back from vacation.